And we are live. Hi everyone and welcome to the Polygon Forest. I'm Ubisoft concept artist Vin Hill, and I'm joined as ever by the indie developer himself, Mr. Christopher Jarvis.
Hello.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about some concept art stuff, I guess. And then there's also a couple of other little tidbits which we might get through at the end. Really depends like how fast we sort of plow through concept art stuff, but yeah, I guess like, do you want to set this one up, Chris? Like, I'm not like entirely sure.
Yeah.
Like,
this is kind of you introducing me, interviewing you. So yeah, it's probably best if I explain. So Vin is a very talented concept artist.
Debatable.
And what our video, I think the biggest video that's done the best is when it's talking about his concept art. Is when it's talking about the things he's done, like Assassin's Creed, Rising Sun, and like what goes into a portfolio and things like that. And with Rainbow Six Extraction coming out, which Vin worked on, I thought it was a great idea to combine looking over the art dump that's just been released on ArtStation, to look over Vin's most recent work that's able to be viewed by the public, because this is like, how many years old is this now, Vin? Is it a combination of mixture of years?
Yeah, it's so I joined the project in 2019, like the end of 2019, maybe 2020, the very beginning. Yeah, it was 2020. Right. Sorry, my bad. Yeah, because it was Assassin's Creed Valhalla before that. So yeah, beginning of 2020, like all the way through until the end of 2021, basically. So pretty much up until release. So it's a good year and a half year of just stuff. So like from 2 years ago all the way up until fairly recently. So it's sort of part of the course.
So yeah, there's the most recent work that we can talk about, but it's the concept artist's curse that you're always talking about old work. So it's almost like, yeah, but I'm so much better now in this last 2 years.
Yeah, it is a massive problem. It is a massive problem in that you're constantly improving. So like whenever you finish something, you're really proud of it. Like, man, I can't wait to show that in like 3 years when the game comes out. And that, but a 3 year time period to a concept artist is a lifetime, pretty much. Like it's you improve a lot, and then you end up getting to this point where you actually don't include everything in your portfolio because stuff that you were super proud of is sort of fallen by the wayside now because it's not that great. So you're sort of like, ugh, it's terrible. But yeah, it's a first world problem, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's like a concept artist ick. It's like looking at work you're able to talk about and share and discuss, but you're ultimately thinking that you've done better since then. But we can't talk about that. Right. Unless you really want to spill the beans and then get in a lot of trouble and get prosecuted.
No, I do not want to do.
Probably not. Okay, so the idea is that I'll be asking some questions, which I think is going to be clickbait, and hopefully we'll see with the results.
Right, that's fair.
So I think these are questions that I kind of find that I still like listening to the answers, even though I think I know I've got an answer. And knowing you for like doing this podcast for like a year now, and the amount of conversations we've had, I think I know what your answer is going to be, but I still find it interesting to ask them, and I still find it interesting to hear your answer. Not only that, but I think there are a lot of people that are just starting out or just trying to figure out if this is an avenue they want to go into, because games are growing year on year. It's still it's the biggest industry creatively. You know, video games are bigger than film, TV, and movies combined, if you take into consideration console sales, but still very big industry.
Right.
And I just think these questions are going to help some people, or be at least interesting. And it's my hope that I can easily chop these up, send these off into the internet, and then see what happens. And while we're asking those questions, we'll be looking at your portfolio and getting to look at the Rainbow Six Extraction images that you've done most recently, and go from there. So, did you want to bring up one of your pieces, and I'll ask my first question? I haven't really thought about the order in which. No,
I think like make it scattershot as possible, I guess, because that's probably it's kind of realistic in that respect. Like these questions don't come in order anyway, so might as well just answer them out of order. So it's not the end of the world.
Okay, so yeah, we can dive into a piece, and I'll ask you a question then. So actually, I'll ask you the question, then you can pick a piece, maybe if you think that it's a good example to explain.
Sounds good. Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good way of going around it.
So the first question is, and it's a big one, what does a concept artist actually do?
Yeah. Basically, the answer to that is very simple, and it's something that most people get wrong straight away. Like they think, okay, we draw pretty pictures, and we just make cool stuff for art books, right? And it's sort of the wrong answer. And a lot of people getting into this industry fall into that pitfall as well. They think that's what they're going to be doing, and they don't really realize like the idea of concept artists is actually they are a tool. So I consider myself like the work that I do is just another tool for the art director to use to communicate ideas to other people in different departments, basically. So if you're a 3D artist and you have no idea what you need to make to be put into the actual game, like the concept artist sort of comes in to be the intermediary between the art director and the 3D artist to sort of massage that through so they know exactly what they need to make. So basically, a concept artist, broadly speaking, is there to help people and there to help the art director mostly, and the art directors, I should say, because there's associate art directors and stuff like that as well, to sort of get the idea into the game. And they might come up with all these fanciful ideas, but they don't really know how to communicate it. But they know how to communicate stuff, obviously, effectively, because they're art directors. That's what they do. But when it comes like to nitty-gritty details, like an art director doesn't need to be so like a screw needs to go here on the side of the gun. Like that sort of information is way too granular, and that's where the concept artist sort of comes in and fills in those gaps. But that's basically what we do. We're just a communication tool.
Okay. And so can you show me an example of how you communicate an idea? So if you're a tool to communicate an idea from the art director through to the rest of the department, can we go into one of your images and you can explain how that would happen? So is a 3D artist going to look at your image and go, okay, this is like a cool little like biopod, or this is a cool like alien structure or something like that, and I can model off of this? Is that how it would work?
To an extent, but like concept artists they have different levels of what they sort of do anyway. So for me, because I'm an environmental concept artist, that's what I sort of specialize in. I specialize in environments. I sort of establish a lot of things. So it isn't just for 3D artists. That's another misconception these days as well, is that concept artists are only trying to help out one or two departments, when concept artists actually touch a lot of different departments now. It's not just 3D artists. So we help out lighting artists a lot. We help out environment artists, which are the people that actually make the levels. We help out texture guys a lot. Like the fact that they don't actually know like how light is hitting a certain material, and they want to know exactly like how to like go about that, and how like mood is affected in the level and stuff. So it's like when we're basically trying to hit all the departments that we can in one piece that we can. So like the piece that I've got up on the screen right now, which is the hangar bay and extraction on the San Francisco level. This was probably used to communicate to various different departments. But because it's such like a high level piece in terms of it has a lot of information that people can sort of extract out depending on which department they're in. So this is what we sort of aim for these days, whereas probably back in the day they were a bit more tactical about it. They would only like, hey, we need a prop sort of thing, but the prop wouldn't be in any context. It would just be by itself on like a grey background, which we still do. We still do that a lot now. But like, if you can show that prop in the world, in the level, then it not only helps.
What it was back in the day for me, like 10 years ago or so. It was just grey background stuff.
Yeah, which it's great, but like if you're handing out to a 3D artist, the 3D artist is awesome. This is perfect. This is exactly what I need. They use it, they model it out, and then the model gets passed off onto the level department. And they're sat there looking at like, okay, what the hell do I do with this? Like, what context is this in? Like, what do I like? And then the lighting artist looks at it and it's like, okay, how am I going to light this thing? Like, I'm not entirely sure. Then they have to have more conversations with the art director. So like, the more information I can pack into like one concept like this, then the better.
Like, taking that example, we're looking at the shuttle. I love the way that the light is coming from the outside and bouncing on the cone.
Yeah.
But then you've also got it going into shadow as the long straight piece of the shuttle sort of goes into the darkness further into the middle of the room. But then you've also got the specular highlights of what looks like engine pieces that looks like it's being bouncing off of some internal like lighting system.
Yeah.
So it looks like there's some lights off to the distance behind that alien structure that's bouncing off of the metal pieces. And so you've got two different light sources, you've got one object, but you've got several different materials being represented and lighting environments just all in one room and on one object. Yeah. So I guess that means that you've got lots of people that need to work together, like the modelers and the shader artists and the environment artists and lighting artists all together. They've got to work all together. So I suppose that's what you're trying to say, where you've got to cater for everyone as much as possible with your images.
It's always good to have, like, as a non-concept artist at any point anyway, like other artists that are working in a studio, it's always nice to have that North Star, as they call it, or the Bible. It's just like everyone is working on the same thing. So to have an image like this to say, okay, this is what it's going to be, it's a lot easier to sort of have the conversations to aim towards that thing, instead of like it being this nebulous idea of like, oh, it needs to have two-tone lighting and it's in a hangar bay and like, wow, what's the shuttle going to look like? All that sort of stuff. So instead of having that, like the concept artist comes in and just fills in that straight away. And it's like everyone is confident going into it, which is really important in that respect. Like people understand exactly what they're aiming for and what they get. And these things come in different levels as well. So it's not like in this case, like I didn't do this from scratch. Like there was a functional screenshot taken from the engine, which was like half built or whatever, right? And then we take screenshots of that and then we paint over it, because they might be trying to figure certain things out in context. Like how is the sprawl or the black goo on the floor, like how is that all going to look in context of this level with all this other stuff that's happening? We need to add like more stuff there. We need to add light, and what's the two-tone lighting going to look like? All these answers I can give, even in mid-production. Like none of this is really... Like people have this assumption that video games are sort of done in a vacuum before production. And it's the biggest misconception about what we do more than anything. Is like, no, production concept artists are there until the game's released, pretty much. Like we're working on the game constantly. And sometimes you got levels that are 99% done and we need to do a paint over. And there's some levels that are literally just big grey cubes with nothing on them. No texture, no lighting, no nothing. And they're like, all right, go, make us something pretty. And you're just there like, okay. And you've got to work with the art director to sort of figure that out for them, so then they can move towards that. But it comes at all different levels and different stages. So it really depends on what you're trying to communicate and what the art director needs to be able to communicate to other people. It is dependent upon that.
That was a great answer to the question, what does a concept artist actually do?
Yeah, I guess.
I've just realised it's like this is an episode which means that Vin can talk for a lot of time, and so this is going to be a great episode because you love it. But I love hearing your answers, because it's just great seeing someone that's like in the industry, you're a senior concept artist, so you've been doing this for a while now, and you can just explain things and put it into words in such a cool way. So hopefully this is going to be a good episode. Yeah, you've kind of almost answered several of my questions, so I'm going to kind of tweak the next one.
Sure.
How is a concept artist's work not used? So you kind of touched on how it is used by what different other roles, like environment artist or shader artist or lighting artist. How is your work not used in the context of people not understanding and misrepresenting what a concept artist actually does? So, for example, do you do the cover art that's going to be on the game, on the box in the shelf in the game shop?
Emphatically no. There's a big difference. You probably know this, Chris, like from the conversations that we've had, but there's a big difference between a concept artist and an illustrator. Vast differences. They work in the similar ways and they work in similar pipelines, but their goals are completely different. And I've done illustration work on games as well, so I can speak to this directly. When you're working on concept art, it's very much for production. Like I said, like you're trying to help the art director as much as you possibly can to communicate ideas. And that work that we do as concept artists, like all this stuff in my portfolio, is not designed for the public to see, basically. Like, you're not really supposed to see this. You are, because it's been released and stuff, and it's there for my portfolio, but it's very much just for me. And it's for the team internally, that's it. That's the goal of the work itself, is just to be used internally. Illustration work, on the other hand, is external. So the end user, or the end purpose of an illustration, like a cover art or what we call key art in games, all of like that marketing material stuff is designed for the consumer, which is for the player, right? So there's just the vast different goals, and you think, okay, if you're doing the same thing and like you're producing the same work, and it's obviously interchangeable, Vin, because you're the one like that's jumping between these two jobs all the time, then what is the difference? And the main difference is time more than anything. So as an illustrator, like if you're working on a game, I can actually show you some from some of the key art illustration stuff which I did for Watch Dogs Legion. I've put it up on the screen now, but this is key art. Like, working with multiple people on this took literally weeks. I think I was on this for about 8 weeks altogether, this one piece. And it is ridiculously highly detailed, because it has to be, because like these things are designed for billboards and things like that. Right? Like you're putting them up and they serve the purpose of selling the game. Like, whoa, that looks cool, sort of thing. I want to play that. Whereas concept art, like while it can look cool and it can look interesting, it can draw people in, that's not its function. That's not its goal. Like its goal is to communicate ideas, whereas illustration isn't. So when you look at key art like this, and you see it all the time, and I always pull this trick on any students that are working, like that want to break into the industry, I always present them with like a page full of key art, not concept art, but key art, like illustration stuff like this. And I always ask them, like, okay, point out the one which is concept art and which isn't like marketing material. And they're like, and then they look at like the most painterly stuff. So you look at the key art for Breath of the Wild, right? And I can actually, like, I'll pull some of it up while we're talking, just to sort of reiterate the point as much as I possibly can. But if you look at the key art versus the actual concept art of Breath of the Wild, like it's laughable, like in terms of like you would honestly assume that some of the work was done from like people on DeviantArt, which is like it looks really messy, doesn't look that great, but it solves its purpose in that it's basically trying to communicate an idea to a bunch of different people internally. And it serves its purpose, because a good piece of concept, like if a 5-year-old kid draws a piece of concept art and it's like this messy aeroplane, it's got like flames coming out of it, shooting lasers and all that sort of stuff. If you ask someone, like if you took that picture away from the kid and went to someone on the street and say, okay, what is this? What is the picture? And they say, oh, it's an aeroplane with lasers and it's got flames coming out of it. That kid is successful in a concept artist. They are a concept artist. They've conveyed an idea and they've passed it on to someone else and they've been able to understand it. Nailed it. Is it a good illustration? No, absolutely not. And it's
Would you want to buy the product based on that image? Probably not.
Right. And it's stuff like that which it makes a huge difference.
And in terms of physical difference as well, is you say the key art has to be blown up and put on billboards. Does that mean that you're working to different sizes as well? So are there more like dots per inch on the key art that you make, knowing that it's got to be blown up? And in turn, is the concept art stuff, is that just like 1080, like 1080p, because it's just got to be seen on a monitor and no bigger?
Pretty much. So like concept art is generally worked to about 4K. I think that's normally the standard. Like most people still work at 1080p. Like that's totally fine as well. Like it's not really that important. Key art, on the other hand, that stuff gets pretty wild. So I think the biggest piece of key art which I've worked on was probably the Watch Dogs Legion stuff, and that got to, I think it was like 20,000 pixels wide.
20,000 pixels?
I think it was, yeah. So it was something like that. Add over 300. I think it had like almost 1,000 layers in Photoshop. Pretty parts of the course. So
1,000. How can your system like deal with that? So you've got to have a pretty high-end PC to be dealing with 1,000.
At work, yeah, we have.
At work, of course.
Yeah. like when we're working on our work computers, we got like Threadripper APUs in there and stuff. So like that's not a problem pretty much. So it's like we're just plowing through this sort of stuff.
Okay.
But yeah,
so here's a new question on the fly then.
Yeah.
I know you're going to get that Breath of the Wild stuff up.
Yeah.
How can someone possibly prepare to get a job if they wanted to get a job doing like illustration or key art? Like, how can you demonstrate those skills if you don't have the layers, like the power to be able to do 1,000 layers? Obviously, you don't need to make anything the size of a billboard and blow it up to the size of a billboard and say, "Hey, look, this fits on a billboard." But is there any advice that you can give about showing something that looks 1,000 layers quality?
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, when it comes to key art anyway, because I mean, you can always just make key art smaller as well. Like if you're practicing the illustration stuff, it's a lot of skills revolving around matte painting and things like that. Like you're wanting to learn multiple fields such as 3D. Like if you don't know 3D and you're a matte painter, then it's going to be difficult, and it's going to be as difficult for key artists as well, especially if the key art is like meant to be a bit more serious looking and things like that, because we're literally not just taking screenshots from the game. A lot of this stuff is built from the ground up for the key art and for the marketing material. So it's a very different field. And this is sort of what I wanted to hit home about, because we constantly hear about things like what people have now referred to as splash art, which is from like Overwatch and League of Legends and stuff like that. And they see these cool characters and poses, and people just assume that is concept art. It's not. It's absolutely not. And it's got a completely different purpose. The splash art is literally for splash screens in the game. It's an illustration. It's not for instant departments to actually make this sort of stuff. The actual concept art for League of Legends is all top down, because like that's how you would see it in game. So they want to sort of design it for that, so it looks like, so you can tell it reads properly. You can see what the character's doing, see if everything is obvious to the player. Like if the character is doing a certain pose, then you want to know from this angle, like, okay, yeah, that's going to look good. But if you did like a cool character and awesome pose like they do on the splash screen art, then it's going to be completely different. So yeah, that's the main misconception which people have about concept art. It's not for marketing sort of thing. It's a completely different field. But you can also do illustration work within the actual within production as well, and that gets a bit more of a grey area. And I've got some of that from Assassin's Creed anyway. If I can find that real quick. I keep changing on my menus. I probably shouldn't, should I?
Well, you can talk about Link first. You got like a budget Link on the screen.
Yeah, that's concept art for Breath of the Wild, and it looks like a kid did it from school, right? So it's just a completely different world.
But does the artist have what they need to know what the character's going to look like?
They absolutely do, yeah. And that's what the important bit is. So another example of like illustration, but within production this time, was some stuff which I did on Assassin's Creed Valhalla in the early days of my time at Ubisoft in Montreal, which is the tattoo work for the main character. So I worked on a bunch of the tattoos for the main character, and that's all illustration work, but it's done in game. So, and it's still not concept art. Like no one else is taking this and using it. It's like that's just in the game. Like that's
it's taken, right, put into the game and displayed in game. Yeah, right. Yeah.
So it's very different goals. So that's the only emphasis, is like concept art is not for the end user to see. It's very much like it's meant to be like this secretive thing almost. Like we're not supposed to show it to anyone else. Like that's the point. But there's some companies that just don't release concept art because they sort of live by that. So places like Rockstar don't release concept art ever. Have you ever seen any concept art for Grand Theft Auto or Red Dead Redemption? No, you absolutely haven't, because they don't release it. And it's that simple. And stuff like that, which it sort of sucks for concept artists sometimes, but it's very much about the goal of what it's there for. And some people are very cagey about what they release because of that reason, because there might be something in the concept which isn't in the final game anymore, and they might need it for a sequel, or they might have a DLC for it planned later on, and they don't want to like give that away. Or like the ultimate reason is that we post some concept art and then a gamer sees it and says, well, I prefer that. And then they start tweeting about it, and they're like, oh, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they listen to their own developers? Oh, this is X company coming down hard on their developers for no reason. Like, they should listen to that. All of that conversation, you just don't want to explode out. So it's sort of like what gets released, what is allowed to get released from the companies is very much determined upon that sometimes. So it's a very tightrope. But that's the roundabout answer of saying that's what concept art is not for, is for the public.
It's not for.
Ironically.
No, that's good. I can understand that going more secretive. I can understand companies getting more secretive as time goes on, because it seems like devs are getting more and more toxic. We're talking about it on the pre-show.
Right.
The devs are getting more and more, not devs, fans and gamers are getting more and more toxic about what they demand of developers. Talking to them not through proper channels, like talking to individual devs as if like each person they speak to is the director of everything, which is just not the case. You're a team of people working with multiple different challenges, all trying to make something cohesive. So it's never simple. So why didn't this thing happen is never a simple answer.
Never.
But that kind of does lead me on to another good question. How much input or pushback on designs do you have in your role as a concept artist? So how much influence do you have? Is the creative director just saying, this is what I want, make my vision? Or can you add some nice flourishes in? Or you touched on it before, sometimes you have some gray boxes and they say go nuts. Can you talk more about how much pushback on designs and how much influence you do have?
I mean, this, and I'm going to frustrate people by even like suggesting this, but the fact of the matter is I'm going to say the words "it depends" a lot when it comes to this sort of conversation. It depends, basically. It depends on the art director and their vision. It depends how hands-off they like to be. It depends how meticulous they want a certain idea to be implemented. So it just depends. Like, sometimes you get art directors that are just like, yeah, we need this, like this building with, and it needs to have this sort of light and a mood. Go. And you're just like, all right, cool. And then you're coming up with everything pretty much from that point. And then sometimes like you get to the end, they're like, yeah, that's perfect, that's great. And then they take it and then they give it, and like your influence is sort of maximized out of that, which is always nerve-wracking. Like whenever you're in these handoff meetings, as they call them, where they pull whole departments together, where it's the art director and you're sat there in the back of the room like this. It's like, crap, they're about to show this concept I've been working on for 2 weeks, and all of these people in this room are going to be studying this thing and trying to dissect it and think about it and like how we're going to make that and things like this. And sometimes when you have those where it's just like you've been given this blue sky and you're just making this stuff up like on the fly, like it's always nerve-wracking because you're just like, yeah, the art director likes it, but will everyone else, sort of thing. And it always works out. It's always fine because obviously if it gets through the art director, then it's fine. But yeah, and then other times you obviously get art directors that are a lot more meticulous and a lot more precise about exactly what they want about certain things, which can be an important sort of gameplay hit. And like if it's something that the player really needs to engage with and something that they're going to be using a lot, like if you're working on a prop, they might be a lot more meticulous about where that screw goes. But if you're working on an environment, they might be like, yeah, we don't really care where the bin goes in the background, like because we can move that around in game and stuff. So it really depends on what you're working on. It really depends who you're working with. And it depends what the goal is. So, yeah, there's definitely all levels of that from top to bottom.
No, that's cool. It must be really cool to be like in that room where you, even if they don't say anything, you get that expression, like the look on people's faces when they see something. Like they can't help but have an emotional response, especially if it's going to be something that they're working on for the next 3 to 5 years, say. So that must be one of those cool moments that you wish could be like shared, like in a documentary. That would be a good highlight in a documentary, like the moment that the concept art gets displayed and the devs see what the look of the game is going to be.
Yeah, it's because like a lot of the time you don't really know what's going to happen anyway. Sometimes because like you'll have an all hands on meeting or something like this is what I've been working on this month sort of thing, and then suddenly like your concept art just starts showing up and it's like, oh crap. sort of thing, and you don't even realize. But like it always works out great because they're the first pass basically. If they're cool with it, then it's probably going to be a good idea. So it's very very seldom that people like push back too hard on that sort of stuff though. Like sometimes you deliver a concept like, yeah, this is completely off. This isn't anything that I wanted. And when that happens, like it very very rarely happens because you normally have like a good conversation with an art director before. But when it does, it's sort of like, man, is that a failure upon like me as a concept artist, or is that a failure upon the art director that didn't give me enough information at the time? And 9 times out of 10, it's because of the art director didn't give you enough information. So you don't hit yourself too hard about that. So when you do see these things sort of unveiled to whole teams, and people like because as well, like something that I always forget about, you sort of get sucked into the moment of concept art, and you're just working on it. And then you finally like push it through. It's like, okay, it's had its last revision. Like the art director like likes it, he's approved it, or she's approved it, and we pushed it out. And it's like, okay, it's finished, it's done. Like I can move on to the next thing now. And you're so exhausted from it sometimes that you don't even realize like how important it is for other people to be excited by that sort of stuff. So sometimes like you see these concepts show up in meetings, and people that aren't in your sort of concept art team see it for the first time. They're like, oh, that looks sick. I can't wait to work on this bit because like that's my favorite bit to work on. That's going to be great when we do that bit. And you forget like how exciting that is for them, not for you personally. Like you can be egotistical about it and enjoy that moment. Absolutely. But like for the other developers on the team that were actually really struggling to sort of visualize it in their head, and then suddenly they get this image, which not only solidifies it for them, but gets them excited, gets them pumped to work on it. Like, yeah, like they go back to their desk and like, all right, let's fucking make a game, Yeah. And that side of it is like, that's probably the most rewarding thing that you can get out of this more than anything.
Yeah. That's a great question. Like what, in terms of what is rewarding in a role as a concept artist, that sounds like a pretty good answer for that sort of question as well.
Yeah. I would say that is probably up there for me. Like just, because at the end of the day, it's not like you don't see anything of your work in the game. It like physically itself, like you don't get a piece of concept art in the game, like just hanging out somewhere. Sometimes you do. You might go into the menus and get extras and get the concept art or whatever. But ultimately, what you're doing is passing it on to other people to create that thing. And sometimes the concept which you did is completely different to what they came up with in the end. But you still feel proud of the fact that you helped them get to that point. So that's
because even if it's a riffing off and a jumping off point, it's still totally valid. Yeah. If your art wasn't like that, whatever they would make still would be different regardless. So right. Yeah. So how long will a piece typically take to make? And you can choose an example if you want, and talk about the timescale that a piece will take. Because I'm thinking that people trying to get into the industry or learning the ropes, they want to have some sort of time frame on how long they should, like when they are at that point where they could be working in a studio, it's taking me X amount of time to do a piece that I'm happy with to this standard.
Yeah, again, sorry to frustrate you, but it depends. So if you're working on a concept from scratch, like there's no engine block-in, there's no anything, like you've got to do all your own research and all that sort of stuff. If you're in that situation, then it can be anywhere between 3 days to 2 weeks.
And this is like 9 to 5 full days.
Yeah. And sometimes they're
for one image.
Sure.
Are you working on multiple images at once?
No, for one image. So like if you're like most concepts, if I'm being brutally honest about it, most concepts fall into about 3 to 4 days to finish a full image. But like you very seldom get the 2-week jobbies, which are normally like the like if you're working on a game in pre-production sort of thing that isn't in full production yet, and they've got no level block-ins or anything like that, and you've got to work all the perspective out and all of the like what the items are going into the game and things like that. When it's that, then you've got a lot more that you have to sort of consider and build up to get the image done, especially because like if you've got a concept for like we need a concept for an open field, and like in the field is this thing, like really all you're doing is concentrating on the thing. Like you don't have to worry about the open field because you can find photos for that, you can photo bash it, you can paint it in, like you know what a field is. You can make that look cool with certain shapes, but there's not a lot of stuff there. But if you're designing a scene for like an Indiana Jones movie or something, like if you go and look at them sets, It's just like there's books and papers and there's like artifacts on the wall, and just like it's just the noise level of it is just, there's so much stuff in there, and if you've got to go in there and like figure it out, like how the lighting's going to hit that properly and how that's going to work, like it takes a long time to figure that sort of stuff out. So there's no set time for that sort of thing, because that is a very complex image versus the thing in a field. So it comes at different levels, but I would say on average, if you held a gun to my head to sort of get the answer, 3 to 4 days would be to get a concept out. That's the acceptable time frame, I would say.
So if you've got a grey box, say if someone could do 3D modeling and get some grey boxes set up for an interior, would it be quicker, a good skill for them to have as a concept artist, and then quicker to finish a piece, and also more representative of the actual disciplines needed to complete the game? It's like if you're a concept artist and you only do 2D, it's like get into 3D at least with some grey boxes placed. Was that a good piece of advice?
Yeah, I would say if you're wanting to work at a AAA game studio in 2022, there's a lot of people that skirt around this answer and say, it's nice if you have 3D. I would say it's a requirement at this point. You need to learn 3D as a concept artist. That's just the blunt end of it. Like, I'm sorry to disappoint some people that want to like work at like a Japanese game studio style thing where you're just working on pencil and paper. That is not how the industry is anymore. They need this stuff and they need it fast. They want your best ideas and they wanted it yesterday. And 3D helps a lot with that sort of stuff, especially when it comes to perspective stuff. Like instead of messing around for hours trying to get like the perfect perspective on stuff like that, why not just build it in 3D in an hour, light it, and you get free lighting out of it, which is great. You don't have to worry about lighting. Like, that's a great base. Awesome. And then you can just start photo bashing over the top of that. So you're not even painting yet. Like, making 3D, you're getting the lighting. Awesome. That's great. Photo bashing. Got all my materials and textures now. Like, you drop everything.
Layer it on.
Layer it in.
Overlay. Job's good.
Right. That's the ongoing joke, right? But like all of that sort of together. And then in the last sort of 15%, that's when you start painting. That's the job now. It's completely changed. It's not like back in the day where you're just on pencil and paper and trying to figure this stuff out. Like, as romantic as that would be, like the idea of that is great. It's not the reality anymore. It takes a long time to do that stuff otherwise. And to get that photoreal finish of concept art, like that we are sort of required to achieve at this point in the industry, it's sort of like it's hard to avoid 3D, and it's always great to have it, basically.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. What other questions have we got? How many brushes do you use?
Go away, Chris. I hate that question. None, really. Like, I've got a couple of brushes which I use, which aren't anything to write home about. Like, the round brush is used a lot. Like, we have a couple of texture-based brushes. Just to put that out there, huge PSA. Like, concept artists hate it when they get asked that question, because it's just like anyone that's in this industry sort of knows it doesn't matter. Like, none of it matters. It's what you're drawing is what is important, and what brush you use to get the right texture. That is the right question to ask to an illustrator, not to a concept artist. Again, it's that perception of like what is a concept artist versus an illustrator, and that's sort of rooted in that question. So like when a student asks me that question, then I know that they don't fully understand the job yet, which is a much bigger problem. So stop asking people what brush they use, because like
if you want to be
a concept artist,
understand what a concept artist does, and B, want to then do that.
Sure. Yeah. If you're an illustrator, perfectly reasonable question to ask. But yeah, a lot of the stuff which I do is about trying to get the right sort of texture from photos to blend together properly, and there's an art to that. Like, a lot of people think, oh, you're photo bashing, that's easy, right? And it's like, yeah, that's easy if you're just using one photo, but if you start photo bashing 500 photos together and you've got to make them look consistent and actually look like they exist in that world, you've got to change all the lighting of stuff, actually paint in the lighting, get all the right highlights on everything, really paint that stuff out so it looks consistent, and it doesn't look like there's no way they can really tell where the photo starts and the painting begins and things like that. Like, you need to learn how to massage that stuff in, and that is an art form which is really difficult, and a lot of people think that it's easy because you just like pasting photos in from Google, right? It's like, no, you have no idea. That is not how easy it is.
This is one of my questions. Isn't photo bashing cheating?
No, absolutely not. It's an art form. It's something that we had to fight back against for a long time. It's only just now become sort of normalized. Like everyone is like sort of on board with it now. They sort of understand it. They're like, okay, like we understand this is a part of the process, because like, why am I redrawing wood again over and over and over and over and over again when I can just drop in a photo and paint over it in literally 2% of the time it would take to render out wood? You know, and like it would argue like you're losing the artistic taste to this sort of stuff, which again,
it's true. It's true, but that's not the That's not the goal. It's not the aim.
Goal. It's not the aim. You're right, and concept artists are there to communicate an idea. So the way that art directors go about it is say, you can do absolutely anything that you want, short of stealing other people's artwork. Like you can use photos, you can use 3D, you can photo bash, you can kit bash. So that's where you take whole sets of like 3D objects and bash them together. Like, and you can buy these packs as well, which are just like bits of screws and bolts and stuff, and then you can build like a robot out of it, take a screenshot of it, put it into Photoshop, photo bash it, paint over the top of it, and it's like, okay, now I've got this cool robot in a pose. But ultimately I didn't make those individual pieces and I didn't make those textures, but I did compile the image to actually convey this idea. And there's like, once you get over that, then people are sort of, you know, like art directors are like, yeah, do whatever. Like all they care about is like, they want an awesome idea, they want it to look cool, and they wanted it yesterday. Like if you can fulfill all three of those things, then you're gold. Really, like you shouldn't feel like, if you're a student and you're sat there like, oh, I don't know if I should, you know, is that cheating and stuff? Like, no, everything goes, absolutely everything. Do not hesitate for a second on any of this sort of stuff. There's no such thing as cheating when it comes to concept art, because all you're trying to do is communicate ideas. That's it. And once you realize that, the whole thing opens up like a floodgate. But that's not to say it's easier, without a doubt. Like if you try and do any matte painterly stuff and try and make it look real, you'll know in 5 minutes. Like just trying to get values to look right, so the contrast levels actually read as if it's like one coherent image, stuff like that. It's incredibly difficult, and it's not any easier than painting or drawing. It's just a very different skill, because the outcome allows us to get to like these photorealish, hyper realistic look of concepts anyway, where we sort of are able to convey a lot of this information relatively quickly.
No, that's great. I've only got a couple of questions left.
Sure.
So you mentioned about like having up to like 1,000 Photoshop layers with the key art side of things. How would you approach, say for example, it's going to be an interior, you're going to be using 3D, or it's like a paint over of a level that's already mocked up.
Yep.
How would you approach, like, how would you think about layering? So you're going to be using photo bashing. How would you approach layers for a piece like that? Yeah.
So in this day and age, like most people are using something called Blender, which is a 3D package software, which is free as well, which is, even that is bananas, like compared to like when we were in school, right? It was sort of like, oh, Maya costs £1,000. Good luck. Sort of thing. And it was like, okay, I guess we're pirating in this because it's the only way we can get it. It's the only way we can learn.
That's what I did.
There was no student edition back then even. So like having that, like having Blender is just, it's like when people complain
game changer.
Like the amount of free stuff that kids get these days, man. Like
kids today, they don't know they're born. They don't know, like pirate dodgy copies. Like I remember there would be that person in uni like going around with like CDs, because we had CDs back then, CD-ROMs. You know, CDs used to go in computers, kids. And he'd be like, "Oh, this is a good crack of Mayo," and then it would go around. It would do the houses, wouldn't it? It would go around.
Yeah. Good times. But basically, we use Blender at first, like to block in sort of thing. And I can probably find, like, I've probably got some files. I'm gonna turn off my screen just in case I've got something that people shouldn't be seeing, because a lot of this stuff is under NDAs.
Oh yeah. There's another thing which makes me feel old. Is that I did my thesis. My title thesis was, to what extent can the software Maya be used to help in concept art? And I got a first class on that.
Nice.
But here's the thing. I answered all my questions not understanding the difference between what a concept artist was and what like an illustrator was or a key artist was.
Yeah.
And so, but you know, to be fair, then the two didn't know either. But also, it was like 10 years ago, and so the industry was in a different place. So I was answering my thesis with like, well, here I just did a deep dive into the tools and what effect it would have, and timing was part of it. But it was just in the conclusion of like, well, it can save you time in X, Y, and Z, but you got a on-ramp of learning the software. 2D artists don't tend to be able to use 3D art, so the people with those two skills is very low. And that is true back then.
It was back then, yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sort of speaks to that, the whole fact that concept art is forever changing as well. That's another thing which like a lot of people sort of miss, is that, okay, if I become a concept artist, then I'm in. And I don't have to learn anymore. I just have to keep practicing, and that's it. No, that's not how it works. You will be forever learning this trade if you're in the industry. Forever. Like, I mean, it literally never stops. Like, because whenever you think that, okay, it's settling down a little bit now. Okay, so it's when we were in school, it was sort of like everything was just painted pretty much. Like there was some photos in there like that you would use for certain things, but you would paint over it and try and get rid of the photo as much as humanly possible. That's just how concept art was. And then it slowly turned into this, okay, now the photos are coming in even more, and it became more and more about matte painting, which was like trying to get this hyper-realistic look with 2D images. And then people started moving into 3D and actually incorporating that in properly. And like over the past 5 years, like the whole shift to, which I personally hate, like I hate the way concept art is going at the moment, which is it's about 95% 3D in a lot of these companies. So if you go and look at Back for Blood concept art and The Last of Us Part 2 and stuff like that, go and look at those pieces. It's about 95% of it is in 3D. Like they're literally just Blender artists at that point, and they're just like touching it up at the very end with photos and painting and stuff like that. But it's become very heavily reliant upon 3D, and then it's now, I think, like the next sort of 5 years, what we're going to be tackling with is that plus AI generated images and stuff. I'm working from AI images to get even faster and all of that might be exciting and stuff, but then in 5 years time something else is going to change, and then something else is going to change, and it just never ever stops. So if you're
eventually,
it will never stop. Like this will never end. It's just like there'll be a new tool or a new thing come out. So if you're in university right now and your tutor that's teaching you how to do concept art hasn't worked in the industry for 10 years, you better go and do some research afterwards, after everything that they say, because they're probably outdated. It's changed a lot.
Our uni was good enough to actually acknowledge that. They did say, it's like,
yeah, without a doubt.
We can only teach you so much, like what's going to be in each individual studio is going to be varied, and they're going to be ahead of what our knowledge is anyway. So we kind of had that knowledge going in. So any good university will be holding their hands up and saying, we don't really know, we think it's this. But regardless, that's a good lesson. Like, always be learning. You're always going to be learning if you're going to get in the industry, regardless. I think eventually it's going to get to the point where there'll be a concept, there'll be like a creative director, and they'll just be like, oh, we're doing a fancy RPG. I'll just type that in, and then I'm going to click randomize until I get enough images that I need.
Yeah, it probably will get to that point. And I think what is probably more likely going to happen is that certain studios are going to set up their parameters for those randomizers pretty much. So, for example, the character creator that's in Unreal Engine 5, which was sort of released last year, a lot of character artists were sort of nervous, and rightfully so, because while it won't cut out all of the jobs writ large, it's absolutely going to put a dent in it. Because why would you hire 5 character artists when you can just hire 3 instead? And we could just use this randomly generated tool, get a base, and then pass it on to the people to actually use. Like, yeah, we really like this, but we need to change like the hairstyle and change the face, like maybe like a crooked little bit there with a scar down and they've got that base now. They don't have to iterate through the basics anymore. And it's absolutely the same for concept artists as well. Like, concept art is probably gonna be declining overall in each sort of studio, because like they're not as needed as much because of this sort of stuff. But yeah, it comes with the territory though. It's very volatile. It's very competitive. Like even I'm in the world's largest video game studio in terms of employee count, I think we've got maximum like 40 concept artists out of 4,000 people. So we're like
So that's like 10%.
What? Yeah, even less. I think like 1%, right?
Oh,
So,
1%.
Yeah.
40 out of 4. Oh yeah, 4,000. That's 1%. Yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah.
So we're quite a small number of people. We're probably a bit more than that actually, but we're less than 2% of the industry, less than 2% of our studio, and we're the world's biggest studio, right?
So that's going to be optimized. That's going to So any AAA studio, that's probably going to be exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like on teams that work on Call of Duty, I think they've got like 8 concept artists for the whole franchise, all of them.
Wow.
So like across all of the Call of Duties that getting worked on at any one time, which is like 3 or 4 of them, right? So less than 10 people. And you can understand how many people are working on those games. It's a lot of people, and they are a tiny, tiny fraction. So it's hyper.
That was another question.
But yeah, to answer your question on the process, I guess. Yeah.
How many layers do you use, Vin? That's going to be a long clip.
Nah, not really. I think it depends on what you're working on, but the way that it normally works is, so I've got this piece up on screen which I did, which is of a Maiko in training, which is like a geisha in Japan, just in a tea room. I did a 3D base for that, which I've got in my art station as well. Started out with that 3D base, and then I moved into something called a clown pass, which is one of these guys, which is just like a kind of funky looking colored version of it. But what this allows us to do is, because of like all these flat colors, we can just go into Photoshop and select all of these things and cut them up. So then all those objects which I've got, they would all be in separate layers in Photoshop. And then I can able to mask either painting or textures to these individual pieces. So I think this one ended up at about 150 layers altogether, like probably by the end. But that's just the reason why I wanted to mention that, I guess, is because you want to try and be as undestructive as possible. What I mean by that is like the more layers that you've got in Photoshop, like the more you can go back and change something if you want to. And that's a really important distinction to make. Like if you want to be someone that works in key art or work on movie posters and stuff like that, you need to get into the habit of never destroying, quote unquote, any of your layers or flattening them down to save memory usage. You need to figure out different ways of doing that. When you're a concept artist, though, you can be a lot more liberal about it and just like flatten stuff down every 5 minutes, which some people do. Some people just work on one layer, which is insane, because if the art director's got some feedback, they have to go back in and carve that out, and it's just
it's like, can you tweak the lighting on that? No.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Really can't tweak the lighting. Well, unless I can do contrast, brightness. I could do the levels maybe in Photoshop. Maybe that's what they do. Maybe they're really good at sorting the lighting levels.
I mean, yeah, we've got other ways around it, but once we've got that, then it's just about layering out light, and because once you've got things split up as well. So like in this piece, which I've got up right now, which is like the main geisha is on in the foreground on the front right. Behind her, there's sort of like a layer of just light basically, which sort of splits her away from the same plane which the Maiko is on, like the geisha in training. And like by having that split up, I can actually just layer in like a layer of light there, and it's really subtle, but it's enough just to make like the characters pop out a little bit. And it's things like that. If you have layers, then you have that ability, you have that control, which is really important for this sort of stuff, especially if you're working with an art director that turns around and says, we need to change the value light on that, or the color of that thing needs to change. Like on the screen doors or whatever, like on the screen cloth that's hanging above the door frame, if the art director came to me and said, hey, we need to change the color of those, by me just having those on a layer already and just doing like a huge shift, and like, how about red? And they're like, yeah, perfect, there you go. Export out, send it. And that takes seconds versus having to go in there and repaint that sort of stuff, or like have to make a selection in the lasso tool and try and figure like you're just trying to find ways to save time basically. So I guess the answer is like I normally land at about 150 layers. Yeah.
Wow. 150 layers. Wow. I was surprised that like those 3 blinds, you had them on separate you did separate colors so that you could tweak each individual blind independently.
Yeah, just in case if the light hits it in a certain way, or if something is messed up somewhere else and you've got to change the value of like the one that's closest to camera. Like, yeah, and 9 times out of 10 you don't need to adjust these things and you don't need to have that control, but it gives you that peace of mind if you do leave it in there, because it's really not that difficult to like to implement this sort of stuff in, especially when you've got things like this funky like pastel version of the thing, which these are all flat and I can just make quick selections in Photoshop and
mask them all off individually. That's really clever. So last question. It's kind of very general. Because we've seen a fair few different oh wait, no, I did have another question, but I've forgotten what it was now. Oh well.
Can't be that good.
No, I know, exactly, right? So we've seen a lot of different genres in your portfolio. What is a good, if I'm just starting from scratch on a portfolio, maybe I've got some uni work, but I wanted to make like, interview ready portfolio. Yeah. We've kind of talked about this before, so it might be going over old ground. How many genres should I be aiming for? How many key pieces should I be touching on? Because I know your answer, it tends to be like aim for the studio that you want to work for.
Yes.
What if let's just say I don't know, and I just want to get a job in the industry?
Right. That is a bad answer, I would argue. In terms of like, because if you go into an interview and they look at your portfolio and it's filled with a load of different stuff, and they're like, okay, what do you want to work on? And they're like, I'll work on anything. I just want to break in, sort of thing. Like, if you've got that sort of attitude for it, it's like, well, you don't really want to work here. Do you know what I mean? And the portfolio sort of reflects that. If it's got a load of different stuff that you don't really quote unquote specialize in, then it's a bit harder to sort of gauge that. Like I myself, like I've got a portfolio that is filled with all sorts of different stuff. So I'm like a massive hypocrite, right? But I'm already in. I've already broken.
You're not practicing what you're preaching.
Exactly.
That's because you're in.
I'm in. Right. I've already gotten through the door. Like I don't need to get past the gatekeeper anymore because, hey, I'm through the gates. I can do whatever the hell I want, yo. Ha ha, sort of thing. But if you're a student and you're specifically trying to break into the industry, you really need to focus in on exactly what you want to do. And the more specific you get with concept art, the better almost. But when it comes to themes, if you do want to show like a range of different things, the only thing I would say to stay away from in this day and age is Last of Us stuff. And I know that's ironic as hell. I know it's kind of hypocritical of me to say, but it's been done a lot.
By you.
I apologize. I definitely added to the pile.
Because Kotaku, if anyone that doesn't know, Kotaku got hold of some of Vin's stuff, and people have also stolen your work and then posted it on the internet, claiming that it was a leaked screensaver for, or like a desktop image for the Last of Us 2, was it?
Yeah. I've had a couple of these, and they're on purpose as well, right? It's because it's to help. It helps like sort of get attention to it as well. So it's a good tactic to do. There's nothing wrong with that. But like specifically with like the post-apocalyptic stuff, if you're gonna do the post-apocalypse, then you need to show something different. Otherwise, it's not going to be really original. Like every student in the world has got like a Last of Us piece in their portfolio
with
these
like
days.
Vines growing over things,
right?
And they're probably looking at your stuff and going,
sure,
this guy's a concept artist. I love The Last of Us. I'm gonna copy this because this is what someone who's in the industry's portfolio looks like. So this is really good advice. Like, don't do what the people that are in the industry have done.
Yeah,
I guess you need to do something different. And so
unless like the only time that this is obviously wrong is like if you're wanting to try and get a job at Naughty Dog, then absolutely go full bore on it, and that's all you should be working on. But like if you're trying to like grab a job at, I don't know, like in the UK, if you're trying to get a job at Jagex or Frontier Games or something like that, and you've got like a load of Last of Us stuff, they're just gonna be like, why the hell are you showing us this? Like it's sort of we don't do this stuff. Like this isn't us. So like where's the dinosaur stuff? Where's the sci-fi stuff that we work on at Frontier? Where is the RPG stuff, like RuneScape style stuff for Jagex? It's that sort of stuff. Like if you have to cater to these companies, otherwise you'll fall in line with the rest of the other juniors, and they just won't take a second look at you because it's just you need to show that you can fit in as much as humanly possible. So I would say try and lean away from the Last of Us stuff, and not anything against the Last of Us or anything like that. It's purely because everyone does it.
Done it already.
It's become a trope at this point.
Yeah.
Like when I was doing it back in like 2014, 2015, like it was still cool to do, and people were still looking at that stuff and being like, "Wow, that looks awesome!" Like, and being able to see like a non-Naughty Dog piece of like, you know, post-apocalyptic sort of style stuff it's interesting. Like a lot of the pieces which I did back in 2014 was this stuff. So which is like The Last of Us set in Japan. Like it's a different thing. Like it's the same theme, but it's in a different context almost. And when you do stuff like that, it was really cool back in 2014 when I did these. But in this day and age, it's sort of like this has been done a million times. So like try and show something new. You need to show them something new, and also that you can fit in as well. So yeah. Stay away from.
And even in The Last of Us too, you know, they went to different places. So they went to Santa Barbara and they went to the coast. You know, so they showed different locations in their second game as well. So
yeah, the what you call it, the Assassin's Creed Japan stuff was like the perfect example of what you should be doing for portfolio work, which is you pick a studio and then you take their IP and then you show them something different with it. So like for me, I did an Assassin's Creed set in Japan, which was like there was no Assassin's Creed in Japan, so it was sort of like, okay, this is a perfect opportunity to show them what it could be, as well as showing off my skills, as well as hopefully getting a little bit of attention online, and to sort of ginny up this marketing campaign for me to get hired. Like this was the goal, and it worked beautifully. Like it couldn't have gone any better, I guess. But it's that sort of stuff that people should be thinking about if you're students trying to break into the industry on a more sort of simplified level. You just need to show that you can fit in, that you can bring new ideas, and that you can think about projects in as a whole as well. So you're not just doing like one-off pieces. You're actually showing a series of images within that world to show, not only can I think in this different spin of your IP that you're already working on, but I can also do it consistently within that world. Like this sort of stuff is what art directors are looking at, and that's like, yeah, this is dope. Like this is exactly what I want. Because if we decide to go to a completely different area that isn't this, then we know that they'll be able to take that and run with it in multiple series of images as well. So yeah. It's just showing that, you know, that appetite to be able to adapt to whole projects and not just like single images. But there's all of that, which is, yeah, really helps out.
And, you know, perfect example of this put into practice, and it actually works because people are excited for it, is the new Kirby game. Yeah. Because that's post-apocalyptic meets Kirby.
Right.
Like, it works. It's true. It's like, people dig the post-apocalyptic stuff, but they never would have a million years thought of putting it with a Kirby game.
Sure. And that speaks to something, right? So, like, if you did some concept, like, people that want to work in a Japanese games industry, like, you're insane, for one, because you should go and research that. But two, like, if you actually do want it, like, it amazes me that we don't see floods of concept art for a Pokemon MMO. Do you know what I mean? It's like, why doesn't that exist? And why aren't people excited about that idea? And it's same with Kirby. I'm like, okay, why wasn't that ever done where there was like this cutesy post-apocalyptics stuff? You know, like, why wasn't that everywhere? Instead, everyone's just like, I'm going to do another moody Last of Us piece, yo. And it's just that over and over and over again. But people aren't willing to like take that idea and sort of branch out and explore and experiment and try different little things, which is hugely important because like that's the stuff that's going to make you stand out more than anything. Yeah,
that's interesting. Could it be that they don't want to try to guess what the next games that are going to be coming out are going to be, and they want to stick to IPs that they're aware already exists, so that they can showcase their skills in at least some sort of context of the industry?
Yeah, that is important as well. Is like if you sort of get an inkling, or if you've seen a leak, or you've heard something, and you know that a game is going to be going somewhere, don't do fan art for that, because generally they've already got concept artists for that working on it, and they're not going to hire you like in the middle of production as well. They're just going to be they're soldiering through, and they've already got everyone that they need. So by the time that they actually do need an artist, that game is well and done, and then it's out. And then what they're doing then is comparing your work to the work they've already got internally. And if you're a student, you've got no competition. Like, you no way in hell you're getting picked over the people that are already working on the game that are like the super seniors, and that's what you're going to get compared against. So it's something that you need to be careful about. Like if you know that a game is coming, don't like base your portfolio upon that. Base it upon the thing after that. Base it on something completely left field. Like just make like a GTA game that's set in Prohibition era America. Imagine that. Like how amazing would that be? No way in hell they're working on that. They're working on GTA 6 right now. Like they really don't care about that sort of stuff. But the idea to show that in context, like show the UI and all that sort of stuff, it's sort of already been done with LA Noire, I guess. But you get the idea. You can find any IP that anyone's working on. And if you know they're going to be continuing to work on that IP, then there's plenty of ways you can go about it to twist and change it, to make it unique and make people look at it and think, whoa, that's cool.
LA Noire's not been done to death. I remember when we played that, everyone was like, well, this is where games are going to be going now. But
never did.
But no.
I love the Prohibition era as well. Like I really want to see more games in that sort of style as well. I think there's so much class and style in it. It's such an untapped market. We need more of that stuff.
I did remember my last question. So how does your role as a concept artist change over time throughout the development of a video game? So is there like so does your job need more or less or different skills, and are you doing different pictures depending on where the game is near to getting released?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, when it comes to pre-production concept art, you're normally working with a lot more stuff that you have to do, basically. So if you're working on something from absolute scratch, which is usually the case in pre-production, like it takes a lot more energy and a lot more effort and a lot more communication with the art director. So it's a lot harder in the beginning.
So what are the stages?
Of actual
pre-production.
Yeah, so it depends. So every company has got a different thing. But they usually have a pre-production period, and then which is usually let's go way back. Okay, at the very beginning, when a game is sort of getting thought of, they have a prototype period, which is usually less than 6 months, I would say, and they're just building grey things, and there's nothing really that exciting about it. And when you're working as a concept artist in that window of time, it's really, really difficult because like you have to work with an art director to really hone in on what the game is going to be like visually overall. So you're thinking about really like nebulous things.
Thinking. Yeah.
So you've got to extract all the information that you can out of like everyone, because everyone that's in a prototype period, it's a very, very small dedicated team, and concept artists are working with that team, and they're really high level people, like the people that are going to be the executive producers and the art directors and like really important people in the room, and you're just there like the lowly concept artist trying to like draw this thing which they're all coming up with. Really, really difficult period. Then that evolves from prototype period in something called an MVP period or a KOM period, depends where you are. It's mostly like, I think by Sony Studios, it's a vertical slice, I guess. Like that's how it normally goes. So the prototype is sort of to test systems of the game, to figure out like if the game is going to work as an actual game itself and to sell it. And then if it gets past that sort of benchmark, the publisher basically says, okay, you've proved that the systems work. Now make us a bit of the game to prove that it'll work as a game, as an experience that a player is going to enjoy. Then that's about another 6 months that you're working on that, 6 months to a year. And then you're working on concepts which are relatively the same, very high box level areas, but they're a bit more defined towards the vertical slice to sort of get like everything in that vertical slice to be absolutely pristine, so like it actually feels like a game. And then when you go into production, you're working on pre-production stuff, which goes back to the hard stuff again. And then it slowly evolves into this. You're becoming a lot more focused in who you're trying to help. So at the beginning, you're working on a lot of high-level concepts, which a lot of hands are going to be touching, and a lot of people are looking at and really studying and trying to figure this stuff out. But the further along you get, like the more you're trying to help smaller and smaller teams and more individual people. So like maybe towards the very end, you'll be working on individual props for the game to sort of get, to help the 3D artists to sort of get these ideas in and figure this sort of stuff out properly. But in the very beginning, it's a lot more sort of high level stuff. So like on Watch Dogs Legion, towards the end, we were working on DLC stuff, which was mostly prop work and figuring that out. Whereas at the very beginning, it was a lot more like high level, like establishing shots of the individual places. So it changes a lot over production, and it's not just...
That's interesting, because a lot of your work I see is really wide, like camera angle, like to try and get as much information into one picture as possible, like as wide, like trying to show how vast something can be, to have the image populated with as much interesting stuff as possible.
Yeah.
So then, and also I've noticed that your actual portfolio doesn't really have any just single items by themselves. So that's interesting to learn for someone that might be going in the industry. It's like, yeah, would it be a good idea to show prop work, or should a portfolio consist of just as many images with as much information on as possible?
Yeah, generally when it comes to concept artists, because we're sort of split between 3 different roles, I guess. So there's the junior concept artist, your standard concept artist, which is like very down the middle, like they do bits of everything. And then you get your senior concept artist. The seniors usually work on the high level stuff, which is like the establishing shots, the big pieces, like the really impressive stuff, which you see in art books and stuff, right? The concept artists like help out on both sides of that fence of like, they still help out on the establishing stuff and all of that, but it's a bit more focused. Like they're a lot more about production stuff. Whereas juniors are very much focused on individual things like props and things like that. So it's actually a very good idea to do a lot of prop work if you can. If you want to break into the industry as a junior concept artist, then it's not a bad practice to have to go after prop work a lot of the time, because that's...
And it'll save time as well,
yeah.
I'm guessing.
Because normally it's like a senior will finish like an establishing wide shot and like, all right, cool, on to the next cool thing. And then that piece is sort of passed off onto all like the juniors, and they're like, okay, this individual thing that's in this piece, like we need to see that from all angles, so the 3D artist knows how to do it, and they'll be working on a lot of stuff like that. Again, it depends upon the art director and the studio, the publisher, the project. Everything depends, but generally, like that's normally how it works, because you want your seniors to work on like the high level stuff, which looks cool, you know, because they need to just plow through that stuff and keep churning that out.
Yeah. So the most senior people that can work the quickest, or have worked with a art director and things like that, they're going to be the ones that are in that room with a small number of people. That makes sense.
Yeah, and it's a good opportunity for the juniors to learn as well, because if they're working on individual things, like they're going to get really good at doing that. But if you gave like an establishing shot to a junior, they'd just be like, okay. And they'll do it, and they'll probably do a great job with it, but there'll be a lot more rounds of feedback, and there'll be a lot of wasted time, because they're still like learning the ropes. Because if you're a junior, you're in your first year of being in the industry, and you need to learn all of this sort of stuff as you go. So you've just got to earn your stripes, sort of thing, by working on crappy prop work sometimes. But that's just the deal. Like my first job was on South Park: The Fractured But Whole. I was working on character costumes for a long time. Something that like, and compared to this stuff which you're looking at now, it's a completely different world. So yeah, you've got to earn your stripes.
You put in the Assassin's Creed, was it wasn't Altair, was it whose
Ezio.
costume was it?
Yeah,
Ezio's costume.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things I worked on. That and the bra hat was my, god, they were hilarious. But fun times. Yeah, they were great.
So why aren't they in your portfolio if they're well, again, I guess it's because you're not trying to break into the industry, but if you were trying to break in the industry, would you be putting a bra hat and Ezio costume in your portfolio?
No, not unless you wanted to work on South Park. You know,
right. If that was your goal, sure. Then
if that was your goal, then you'd just be sat there making South Park characters all day, which are actually really easy to do. At a relative, obviously, like you have to, once you nail the style anyway. I definitely had things come back from the South Park studio saying this looks too good, make it look crap. Like that, when you get that sort of feedback, it's hilarious. So
how are you supposed to work with that sort of feedback? Yeah,
South
when
Park.
You've spent years trying to make things better and better and better. Yeah. Right. Well, that's all my questions I got.
Cool.
I think that's been great. Thank you very much, Vin. If you've got any questions, then leave them in the the comments. If you like the videos, then like, comment, subscribe, click the bell notification. Because if this sort of thing does resonate with people, then we might end up doing more videos of different topics to help concept artists. Because we've got a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, I might do a reverse. I might do a reverse interview one day, and then ask Chris like what his journey has been like as an indie developer. That might be an interesting one to do. So let's see, like, what are the biggest pitfalls that you went through in your first game, and what do you regret doing in certain ways, and what should you do, and what advice would you give? Like, that'd be an interesting one. But if you're interested in that, then please let us know, and we'll get on that, because I think it's going to be...
Vin could also answer those questions. So that'd be good, because we can maybe have different opinions or different experiences.
True, very true. Yeah, because I'm sort of, I don't know, I've been tainted by like the AAA studio culture sort of stuff, so everything I do is through that filter almost. So like I find
you've got best practice just coming out of veins sort of thing,
which
is great.
But I don't think that's like indicative of normal people though, like such as yourself. Like it's just people.
I guess I'm more of an example of less experience in the industry.
And how you got
like
through
self-taught.
that, like the overcoming of that. I think that's just as important, because without that sort of, I don't know, foreknowledge of how it's going to go, like you're constantly in the dark of like, okay, I guess I'll try this, I'll see what happens, sort of thing, and that is kind of nuts. Like I wouldn't even know how to go about that. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, we can see about that maybe if we have a slow week.
Yeah.
See what happens. But yeah, if you have something you want to see, then let us know in the comments. Did you want to talk about anything else before we wrap this one up, or?
I don't know. I mean, have you been playing anything different, I guess?
I'm liking Horizon Forbidden West more.
Oh yeah.
I've just been sticking to the main missions and just liking the story. Like I'm really digging the story. They know how to write narrative. Characters that I'm coming across, really well written, really well performed. Dialogue between characters, just really good. So I'm enjoying it more. Like I'm getting more. Like I found my feet. The buttons are feeling responsive, and just like going into the world. I did find this cool little bug where a soldier who was hiding in a rock. I don't know if you saw that.
No, I didn't.
I came across a bug where it's where you first, spoilers, when you first come across like the elephant robot.
Okay.
And you got to clear out all of the soldiers. I spent several Horizon Forbidden West days, cycles, trying to figure out where the last person was, and I thought they must have run off. Turns out they were hiding inside a rock. So the character model had fallen inside this rock, and I could hear it near the rock. It'd be like, "What's that?" And I would be like, "I don't know, what is that?" And then it'd be like, and then straight away they'd be like, "Oh, it must be nothing." And I'd be like, "Okay, someone's here, but I can't see them." And I would try to make noise and throw arrows, and then just saw their bow and arrow sticking out of the rock and moving about a bit. And then they actually can shoot out of the rock as well. And I had to just run around the rock and hit my spear. And eventually it did hit, and eventually they did die, but it took a while. They didn't hit me once, so that was interesting. But yeah, I was more happy than peeved about that glitch, because it was just absolutely hilarious. It was just brilliant. Yeah. How are you? You're further along than me, aren't you?
Yeah, I think so. But I took a break for a couple of days because I've been busy with other work stuff. But I'm gonna get back to it real quick. But the only other thing that I was playing, I decided to install because it's once tried out because people have been talking about it every now and then. But I installed Guardians of the Galaxy, which it's come on to Game Pass, and
it's won awards, so it's award winning. So
it won awards for its writing as well, I think.
For writing, yeah.
So I thought
the narrative.
Yeah, I'd give this one a shot and just think, okay, like I like Guardians of the Galaxy. I like the characters, like the juxtaposition of the group is just they're ridiculous, and like it's not to be taken seriously in any shape or form. But the fact that it won Best Writing made it interesting for
enough to pique your interest, and the fact it's on Game Pass meant
and it's free. Yeah.
You're not lost anything. Yeah,
it's just a matter of trying it out and testing it. Holy crap, this game is good. Like
really?
Yeah, I'm really shocked by it actually. Like
because the reviews were mixed.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
I can see why it won awards for the writing, honestly. Like the job that they do between the different characters is fantastic. If you in terms of like how much characters talk, like they talk a hell of a lot. Like there's pretty much no moment where a character isn't talking, but because there's so many of them and they're having conversations constantly and they're just like banter and just teasing each other and playing games and having fun, like it just never ends. But it's so well written that it works. and it works really, really well. And it's not too hand-holdy either, like compared to Horizon, you know. But the writing's great. Like Drax in particular, like his voice actor as well is just fantastic. Like he's really, really well done.
So you've got over the fact that it's not Chris Pratt, and you've got over the fact that they don't look like the films, and the actors are different.
I kind of like that they are, though. Like not those, you know. I like the fact that they're different people. I like the fact that they're. This is akin to like the Spider-Man games, right? Like the new Spider-Man games,
right?
Where the main character is not the same as like the ones in the movies, but they're really, really well done. So I can't they fit the world really, really well. I can't recommend it enough though. Like I'm having a great time with it. The only thing that is a little bit weak on it so far is the the combat is a little bit one-dimensional. Like at first, it takes a while to sort of get going, but once you get more abilities and stuff, and you can do more stuff, it feels a bit better. But yeah, it takes a while to sort of get into. But yeah, great game. I think people should try it out.
Brilliant. Okay, yeah, I might do then because it's on Game Pass, so I've got nothing to lose. But my time, I'm just so busy these days, doing a portfolio and trying to make a game. Yeah, busy times. Indeed. And trying to play Horizon.
Yeah, finding less and less time to work on games. To play games, trying to find more time to work on games. Like that's the thing. I'm currently working on 3 of them, which is nice, including work. Like Christ, my life is pretty wild right now. But it will slow down one day, I promise.
Well, yeah, that's not typical. That's working on 3 games at once is not typical of anyone in the concept art industry.
Yeah, that's true. I should probably rectify that at some point.
But thank you for watching. Let us know your thoughts, as I say, and we'll catch you in the next one. So next week we're going to be on. Is it Saturday? We're going to be doing our 4th roundtable.
5th. It's going to be our 5th roundtable.
Yeah. Our 5th roundtable where we're all making us. So me, myself, Chris Jarvis, Vin Hill, and Sam Webster. We're all making indie games, and we're putting it on this channel. And we're talking about our progress, and we're all in different stages of development, and we're all making very different games. So if that's your jam, then join us for that as well next week. Saturday is when we're hoping to do it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, Saturday. I'm not sure of the time because
9 o'clock UK time.
Yeah, and
but Canada has daylight savings between then.
Yeah, we just switched last night, and I don't think you guys switch until next week, right? So it's all messed
29th.
up. All right, you got 2 extra weeks. Okay. Yeah, we'll post it on our Twitters anyway. So make sure you follow us on Twitter. I am at Hillfort Games. You can find me and some of my indie game stuff there anyway, as well as my concept art stuff is on ArtStation, which is at Vin Hill Art, which you've sort of seen some of it today anyway. But follow me on there, and I'll probably post up the times for when we're going to go live for the Solo Dev Roundtable next Saturday. But Chris, where can people find you, man?
So yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Acrylic Pixel, and TikTok Acrylic Pixel as well, and itch.io Acrylic Pixel.
Ooh, Chris is branching out to other things.
Yeah.
Didn't you just post up something to do with your narrative stuff? Do you wanna plug that?
I can plug that. Yeah, it's just a portfolio piece. It's just a short text-based video game where it's like a choose your own adventure kind of deal, but it's more trying to replicate what sort of choices you'd have in a AAA video game. Right. It's a pirate murder mystery mission.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a read through it. I enjoyed it. So yeah, people should go and check that out. If it's on your IO one, right?
So it's on itch.io.
Yeah. So
it's free.
Yeah, no money wasted. Think of it as
It's like a 5-minute read. It's like a 5-minute read.
Yeah, especially if you're in the games industry and you want to give Chris a job, then please do that. Look at Chris's face. Oh my god, I don't know if I'm ready yet. But yeah, well,
I'm ready.
Yeah, well, you're ready to leave, but you don't know. You need to post more stuff though.
Oh, thanks, Vin. You didn't agree with me.
Yeah, well, I'm joking, obviously. No, I mean, you're working on your own games. You're working on narrative direction stuff. It's only a matter of time before you get there, man. So just keep pushing, keep making stuff. You'll be fine, I'm sure.
Yep.
So far, so good.
This time next year, Rodders.
Yeah, but one day you will find that watch. You know, like that's the dream.
There'll be like a narrative idea that's just plucked out of my brain. It'll be the gold watch.
Indeed. Any day now.
Breath of the Wild MMO.
No one will play that. Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, what's...
It's Nintendo, though, so they would.
Yeah, I mean, Nintendo could literally, like, put out... I don't know.
Anything.
They could put out a slideshow of just, like, different shapes of dog
Mario
poo,
characters.
and they would still be like, yeah, this is a 10 out of 10. This is great. It's got that Nintendo magic. Yep. Good with this. $60? Yeah, no problem. Here you go. After 3 years of release, yeah, no problem. Here you go. Thank you. Blows my mind.
Yeah, it's got to have Mario's in it somewhere. Like Mario just looking at dog poo, maybe.
Maybe, or just like a dog poo in the shape of Mario. What are we talking about? Anyway, let's get out of here. Yeah, again, thank you everyone for joining us. We really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon so you can be notified when we do go live next week, which is usually every Sunday. And if you want to find out anything else, then please follow us on Twitter as we gave before. So until then.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Peace. Bye-bye.